Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Life of the Lost. I'm Sam.
And I'm Megan.
And this week's episode, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about something called sacrifice and how sacrifice plays in mine and Megan's life. As you might know, if you're just tuning in, I'm a huge fan of music, and music is my passion. I'm a guitarist. I play electronic music, and that all stemmed from when I was about 13. Ever since 13, up until this moment now, I've had to make sacrifices throughout my life, whether it be from sacrifices from hanging out with my friends who wanted to go to the beach, who wanted to do teenage stuff, and I'd have to sit there and I'd have to be in my room and kind of say, I'd prefer to better myself and learn these chords, learn these scales in the hopes that in the future I'll thank myself for making that sacrifice. When I got to the point of trying to figure out which college I want to go to, that mentality stuck with me. So I didn't choose a college that was far away from home because that would mean that I'd be further away from my bandmates. So that would make my musical career pretty much die in a sense. And I wasn't prepared to do that. So I made a sacrifice by staying home, going to somewhere closer to home, and being able to continue my musical career. And I don't know if this will all pan out. I have faith that it will. I trust my abilities to make my dreams a reality. But again, hopefully one day I'll be able to look back and say thank you for this 28-year-old me. Thank you for making these sacrifices since you were 13. And I guess getting a little bit more into this topic, I kind of wanted to talk about you and how sacrifice impacted your life, because I know that you have two different families, one from Peru and one from Minnesota. Ever since you came to New York, it's been a hard transitioning, trying to make sense of helping your two families understand in their own ways why you chose what you chose. Mm-hmm. Maybe would you like to fill me in a little bit in the details about that?
Yeah, to kind of paint the scene for everybody. I was about 26, 27, and I think when I was a teenager, I thought at 25 I would have everything together. I thought I would be married, have a house, have maybe one or two kids.
Definitely feel like most of us felt like that when we were younger.
Yeah, and I think...
So you're not alone.
At that time, I felt like I was seeing a lot of my friends, like going off and buying houses and having babies and things. And I remember on my 25th birthday, it was just kind of, I was bummed. It's not that anybody did anything. It was that I felt like I didn't amount up to enough myself. And I know, like, when we were 13, we kind of made a pact to each other when we were 25. We'll get into that one day.
Yeah.
But that hadn't come true either. And so... there was just so many like unknowns and so much uncertainty in the midst of a lot of certainty, because when I was around 26, 27, I had like a wonderful job at a community college. I was a creative director. I loved my coworkers. I loved everybody in that college. We had a lot of diversity groups, so I felt like I was really welcomed. There was nothing, I can't really say too much of anything negative from there, and which is kind of unlikely, when you have a job. There's always like, both sides.
Yeah.
I really loved it, and I had a wonderful car. It was very reliable. I had a beautiful apartment. It was absolutely beautiful. It was like 1,000 square feet for $1,000, and being in New York City, you're not going to find that.
Yeah, it's non-existent.
Yeah. So it was really nice, and one could say I had everything. My family in Minnesota, they were about 10 minutes away from my apartment. I had... your local Trader Joe's, and the gym was right there, and I was probably a 7-minute drive from work. So everything was so nice, and everything just seemed like it was pretty perfect. But I think something kind of deep down just didn't feel perfect. I didn't feel good when I thought about, okay, I'm going to stay here for the rest of my life, and I'm going to retire here. Especially when you're working at a college, you're seeing everybody kind of grow up, grow into who they want to be, career-wise, and then they leave. Maybe they find a job, or maybe they go to a university. And for me, I was done with college. I didn't really want to go back to college, and I'm watching everybody else flourish. Flourish? Flourish.
I don't know.
And instead of doing anything more, I just kind of felt I was standing still. And I didn't like that feeling. And I think from the outside, everybody was kind of confused when I announced I'm going to move to New York City. It was like kind of a surprise, kind of not a surprise at the time, because I had been coming out here just to visit a little bit more often, because I just kind of wanted to make sure that that feeling of coming out here, it was strong enough for me to actually move. And so I made a pact to myself. I believe I was here in October one year, September, October, somewhere around there. I was out here, and I remember how good I felt out here. And I remember just being by the river, the Hudson River, one night. And of course I had been drinking a little bit, but I still felt really great. And everything about it felt like home, a different kind of home, right? And everything felt really good. It felt like there was so much energy. It felt like being around people was really great. It felt like there was a lot more opportunities out here. And so that night, I told myself, I'm going to be back here in a year, and I'm going to be living here in New York City. It's pretty scary, right? Because for a lot of things in my life, I'm very, like, I'll start it, but then I'll stop it. I'll go 100, and then I'll stop. And for this, it was more of, all right, let's get it together, Megan. I didn't necessarily have a plan, a giant plan. I just said, I'm going to come out here. I'm going to save my money. And so, saving paychecks, things like that, trying not to buy too
doing
many
little
crazy
things
clothes.
to like set yourself up to like be able to do that.
Yeah, it wasn't like I'm going to put away every single penny or anything. But then it came to the day. It came to that day where I had to sell my car. And that was my baby. And I was like, oh no, gosh, this is really happening. That day and the day I was selling all my graphic design books, I was giving away to my friends.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh God, it hurts so bad. You're taking all my books. You better take care of them. Because I love those books, but these things are just material items. And I think going back into sacrificing, what are you going to sacrifice to get where you want to push you forward?
I feel like that's like the question of the day, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are you willing to sacrifice?
Yeah, what are you willing to give up to actually
Is it worth
go?
it,
And that's the thing, you never know.
You don't know.
Yeah.
Just got to take a leap of faith sometimes.
Yeah, and that's completely what this was, because I don't have any like family per se out here. I had you and I had Akuro, which I love too, because I was hanging out with him probably, once a week for a bit. He was a really great support system. You're a really great support system, and you guys still are. And so that was like the two people, along with your mom, who really held me together, who kept me, pushed me through this, because I did have a lot of hard times. I was missing things, right? I was missing Mother's Day and Father's Day and birthdays and holidays, and that was really hard. I think the transition was, this is going to sound funny, but the hardest transition I had in the beginning was Thursday, Friday, and Saturdays, because those were the main days that we would go to bars. Like my family in Minnesota, we'd go to the bars and we'd hang out as a family and friends, and we'd just chill and drink, and I loved that. And we were just always together. It was just something that I really missed. It just was like that sense of family, and then we'd go out to eat, or we'd go out before and we'd go visit the grandparents on the weekend too, and other family members, and people were coming in your house, and it was just this constant like love always. And so it's not that there wasn't enough love here, it was just that the constant, I don't know, maybe going out with family, or I don't know exactly.
Yeah, no, I definitely it's interesting because how I grew up, it was my mom didn't drink. I wasn't really a big drinker, so definitely that Thursday, Friday, Saturday lifestyle was
Wasn't
not
happening.
in my life. That didn't happen until I was maybe I don't know, I'd like to say 25, 26. That was around the time I honestly personally got into football, and my mom didn't follow me. It wasn't she's like, let's do it together too. So it was kind of just me on my own, which was just interesting. Because when I went to Minnesota to visit you and your family, it blew my mind, because it was just so different. So it's interesting how you came here and you had a problem with that. And I think too, it was hard for me too in the beginning to understand how important that was and how used to that lifestyle you were, because that wasn't really a thing in my life per se.
Yeah, and it was.
And I'm not even sure if it was a thing in New Yorkers' lives. I'd be curious, anybody who grew up in New York, did your family, go out to drink on Thursday, Friday, Saturday? And if so, was football ever huge part of your family's tradition in that sense?
Yeah, maybe it's more like about traditions.
Yeah, be curious to know your guys' thoughts on that.
And it's funny because it's like, it sounds like we're always drinking all the time, but I don't know. It's just that just kind of went hand in hand usually. I mean, it's not like we always did that. I think it was more of that sense of being together as a whole, just making new memories, going out, talking about our week, complaining, being more positive, being negative, like, a little bit of everything.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting too because I guess the stigma, like the idea of going out and drinking before I did that might have been warped. You know, it's like you always have this version of what you think something is going to be like until you actually experience it. Only do you find out how different or how less extreme you might have thought that event or activity was.
Yeah.
But in your mind, you made it seem like, oh my God, it's going to be like this wild thing, but it ends up turning to be like,
right. It's not like we all
as
got
crazy, but enjoyable, fun, something you didn't expect. And that's something personally that I can relate to when you're talking about going out with your family, like to a bar and just hanging out, you know?
Yeah, it's not
like
like
a
you
bonding.
get smashed every single night.
Oh God.
It's just like for fun, and you still eat and you still hang out.
Yeah.
But I think that was kind of hard for me too, because your mom and you live like, you guys are a little bit separated in that, where she kind of goes off and does things with her friends and you go off with your friends. And for me, those things were combined for the most part. And I think that was kind of hard, because when she would leave, I'd be like, what? She didn't even ask us to come with. Because, in Minnesota, you're like, oh, we're going to Walmart. You want to come with? We're going to go meet up with so-and-so. You want to come with? We're going to go to the farmer's market. You want to come with? Like, it was a constant, like, togetherness. And so I think coming and hanging out, not saying that you weren't, like, enough to hang out with, but at the time it just felt like, my community is just kind of like, where'd it go?
Yeah.
And that was pretty hard in the beginning. But then, you get a job and you meet coworkers and more friends, and that kind of fills that. But I think a lot of people were confused, especially my family in Peru. They were just like, why would you go to New York? You have your entire family in Minnesota. And also, they didn't ever really come out and say this, but I think they were thinking, why didn't you come to Peru? If you had to leave Minnesota, why didn't you come to Peru? And
that's interesting.
Because that was an option, because in my head, I was circling between New York, Texas, and Minnesota. And kind of why I wanted to go to Texas is because my grandma had gone down there, Grandma Lee. And so she kind of made it seem like it was really cool. And so I was like, maybe I should like follow her footsteps and see what that's like. I think my family was really confused, and they still sometimes ask me like, where are you at? What city are you in? I was like, I'm still in New York City. Like 3 years later, I'm still here, guys. And they're like, well, where's your mom and dad? They're still in Minnesota. And so it's kind of like implying something without saying it. And I think it sucks, because there's a lot of opinions too on why would you run away from both families? You have 2 full families. My mom and dad on both sides are still together. So my mom and dad in Peru are still together, and in Minnesota, they're still together. So there's no division. It's weird for people. They're like, you left them both. You didn't pick either of them. You're not taking care of them. You're not supporting them. Like, why would you do that? That's really hard on me too. I think in the last episode, I was kind of touching on not being there for when people die. And I think right now is especially hard for me, because my grandma Rakis is currently dying. And it's hard, because you want to be there when people die. And I'm not going to be there for that, especially because COVID right now. That's the primary reason I'm not going. She's in hospice right now, and I would really hate myself if I picked up COVID along my travels out there, or brought him back here to the family here. And so I think that's a giant bummer for me right now. I'm kind of working through, but it's also something that I kind of had to accept, and I do accept every single time I see my family. The last time I went to Minnesota, my grandma was also in the hospital. And I'm just really glad that you were there and you got to see her. When I left her and I gave her a hug, I just remember thinking, like, this is... Just be ready, Megan. This is probably the last time you're going to, like, give her a hug. You can just feel it. And it was. That's my sacrifice that I'm making, is not being there for my family when they die. Although like my grandma. Everybody has been there for me since I came to the United States. So, I mean, sometimes I look at myself and I'm like, wow, you're so selfish. Like, you could have been there. You had everything. And just say, hey, you're doing this for your family. You're doing this so you can be better, become something better than maybe you ever could there. And one could say you could have been doing all of this in Minnesota too. There's a lot of like if, ands, or buts. That sounds like my mom. She always used to say that.
Really?
Yeah. But anyways, there are a lot of if, ands, or buts, but it doesn't matter because I felt like this is the jump I needed to make to push me forward. That is a sacrifice that I had to give up. Because I didn't choose either side, I'm choosing me. I'm choosing to progress myself more. I'm choosing to become something more than I thought I could in Peru or in Minnesota. And now I'm here. And I think it's never easy, but it's life, and I'm proud. You know, I'm happy I did it. I'm sad because obviously it's not the best circumstances right now, but you know, there's amazing things like FaceTime. And I get to see my grandma and talk to her and just tell her how much I love her. And, you know, it's just one of those things that comes with moving, I suppose.
Yeah, it does. You know, I can relate too in the sense of sacrifice. I maybe could have wanted to move somewhere else, maybe to Las Vegas or California or something. But due to, you know, my career, and I think that it's best for me to stay here for the time being, especially, you know, for my mother. She is the only thing that I have, and I don't have a dad, I don't have sisters, I don't have brothers, and it's just me and her. And so one could say that I'm kind of limiting my options by staying here, but it's a sacrifice, like you said. And I'm not limiting my options in the sense of me pursuing my career in music, because this is fortunately for me, New York City is a huge, you know, hub of electronic and just art in general and culture and people. So there's a lot of opportunity here for me, which I'm very happy about. But I'm a little envious of you, you know, because you spent your whole life in one state, and now you're kind of creating your own life in another. And maybe in another life I would have liked to do that. Maybe in the future I still can do that, but I have to accept that might never be a possibility. But that's okay, because like you, that's just a sacrifice that we have to make in our own lives. And we just have to pray and hope to whatever higher power we believe in, if any, that it will all turn out okay, and that we can all look back and just say, whew, take a deep breath and just thanks Sam, or thanks Megan. You know, I'm so happy that you decided to stick it out. Because if you didn't, I'm just happy, you know?
Right.
So that's just interesting, and maybe you guys stay tuned and find out whether or not we get to where we want to be. But I'm confident. I'm very confident. I just have a good feeling. I really do.
And I appreciate that about you, because I feel like there's a lot of these times, you know, where I feel a little bit more down, you know, especially if from a family member dying to missing out on family events. I have a giant family on both my mom and my dad's side. And so here celebrating holidays is much different. Also because you're Jewish. So it's like it's not like you have that giant meal, you know, that Thanksgiving meal of like this giant turkey and the corn and the ham and
the Christmas tree.
The Christmas tree, like things like that too. So I think that's, you know, missing out on things like that you grew up with. But ultimately I have to keep looking forward, and I look at my mom in Minnesota. And I kind of had this conversation with her the other day when I was saying that I would have loved to be able to come back to Minnesota to see my grandma. But it's in life, we have sacrifices, and we kind of got into this conversation. I told her, you know, I'm very thankful that she really wanted to be a mom, and that she kept searching and kept pursuing adoption, and that her and my dad picked me. And I think that they made a lot of sacrifices. Obviously, adoption isn't cheap, but they stuck with it. They stuck through all like the temper tantrums and the battles of my teen years, and they stuck through, and they still showed me so much love and respect. And I think that
and I must say I'm very like, you know, have a lot of respect for your dad here in Minnesota, you know, for staying with that and helping you and just being understanding even as you get more into your adult life, because
I have to step back
I
from
don't
that
know,
a lot
I
of the
think
times.
you know, fathers don't really tend to do that. Sometimes when things get tough, they kind of bounce. I know mine did in Peru. When
Yeah.
things got tough, he was just kind of left.
yeah,
And so I'm very grateful for the ones who stay and who accept that role of a fatherhood, no matter how hard it can be sometimes, because I know that their children will always see that, and they will
Yeah.
always remember that
Yeah.
and benefit from that.
well, especially like lessons. For me specifically too, when I think of my dad, I just think of all of the amazing things he's taught me. Do you know how to change a tire?
Nope.
You know, like, do you know how to like patch a hole in the wall? You know, or like do all of these things. Like my dad, you know, made a lot of things with his hands, and he's always fixing things, you know, in the house. And so just watching him and getting to see that, and now being able to sit here and there's something wrong, and I'm just like, oh, be right back, gotta run to the hardware store, I get this, and this, and like it's no big deal because it's just something that I was raised with. And so I think kind of bouncing off what you're saying is, you know, taking those skills and life lessons that my parents gave me, and being from each side, you know, from the Peruvian side and from the Minnesota side, and being able to kind of create the own version of myself.
Yeah, and maybe your Peruvian side might not have given as much as your Minnesota side, but they gave almost the biggest one of all,
Yeah.
which was you, an
Yeah.
opportunity to experience all of those other life lessons that you learned with your family here in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So, you know, it all kind of evens out in the end.
Yeah, like a lot of people like to compare and contrast, and I can't lie, sometimes I do too, but you're right. You know, there's a lot to be said about that as well, and that just kind of goes back to what I was talking about with sacrifice, like my mom in Peru sacrificing me for the betterment of her family as well. It wasn't just me, you know, because she had other kids, and I understand that if I were to stay, I know a lot of worry would have gone into me providing for me, and she also had other kids, so then, you know, not giving them as much support emotionally, financially.
Yeah.
And so I just think that's really important too. But this conversation I was kind of having with my mom was about how I told her that I was really thankful that she wanted to be a mom, and how they took all the steps to get me, and that she could have done a lot with her life if she didn't come out to get me. Maybe she had dreams of what she wanted to be when she was a kid, and she didn't pursue that because her dream at the time was to become a mom. And because she was a damn good mom, I'm right here. And then we just have to keep sacrificing certain things in our life, and I can go back to her mom, you know, and talk about things that she might have sacrificed as well. So I think this is kind of like the biggest picture is just like sacrificing and giving things up for the next generation, for your family. It doesn't go to say that I don't want to still go visit them all the time. I miss them to death. You know, it doesn't mean that I care any less. You know, if anything, I care more. It's important to kind of see yourself through, to stick it out, and to look back and say, damn, like, I might have not had all those things when I was 25, but I sure as hell have a lot of things going for me right now, and I can only be so proud of that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's important to understand for me in my life and in your life, and I know that, you know, we talked about this too prior about making sacrifices for your family. I know my family is rooted in theater, and my grandma, I really look up to her. I didn't really meet her as who I am kind of right now, in terms of very like aware of my life, aware of where I want to go, and I wish I could have, but I really look up to her and my grandpa, because they were really important for my whole family. You know, my uncle, my mom, and they were really I really loved the atmosphere that they brought when it came to Seders, and they just had such a good aura around them. A lot of friends would always come to see them. They're like this like powerhouse couple, and I just remember looking at them like a little baby, eating my chopped liver with crackers. I still do not know how I loved that, but I really did. I would just sit there and just watch them talk, and it was awesome to see. As I'm older now, I am making it more of a mission to keep that going, keep that music alive in my family. I might not be related to my mother by blood, but I can do everything else in my power to, sorry, that might have not made a sense sentence-wise, but I think you kind of know what I'm trying to get at, where I just want to do everything else in my power that might not be blood-related, like in terms of just that whole nature versus nurture thing, and to just keep that alive. And, you know, I do make sacrifices on behalf of that overarching dream that I have, and just to keep that going for like future generations, so I can be an example for them and they can see that, and we can continue to grow in the right direction. And I think that it's important that me and you kind of understand where we fit in. And I think maybe it might be nice for anybody to kind of take a reflection and kind of see where they're going in their life, and see how their life will help the future generations become better and move forward, and giving them that opportunity to do that, I think is really important. And it's really selfless, and it's just one of those things that you just feel is right in your heart, just to do, because especially as we're adopted, two people who are adopted, I just want to give back. For me, I just want to give back to my mom for, like you said, your mom and my mom were very good mothers, and they wanted to be mothers so badly, and they dedicated so much of their life, so much of their money, so much of their time to ensuring that we have the best childhood and the best life. I'm just really happy that we both have that mindset moving forward, and we set up our lives to have that come to reality. And
it's important, because it's one of those things where you want to make sure that the people who you're surrounded with understand where you're coming from. Maybe they might not 100% understand, but that they can relate. And it's really nice because you 100% relate to what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And some people in your life too, whether it's friends or family along the lines, you know, they might not understand. For instance, situations where you want to hang out and you want to have these times to bond with your friends, but, you know, obligations come up, and you know, you have to make a decision, a sacrifice again, to hang out with friends, hang out with family, or kind of grinding and pushing yourself further and further into your craft, into your passion, excelling that, because that's ultimately what you want to do. And some people will understand that, some friends, some family will understand that, and others might have a hard time. And that's when, you know, you guys have to maybe go your separate ways, but it's okay, because you just have to do what you have to do. And that's sometimes how life works out.
You're right. You know, and sometimes you have to get rid of toxic people, or maybe people who just don't necessarily fit in your life anymore. Because you're kind of at that point in your life, you know, even with COVID, you know, like a lot of friends are out partying or at bars and things, and I remember us just walking down to get your ice cream, you know, at the CVS. And, you know, a lot of people are out at bars, and the restaurants are open now. And me and you just looking at each other and thinking, like, it'd be really nice to go to a restaurant. But
yeah, I'm envious. You don't know how many times I look at these tables out and people are just chilling, and I'm just like, dang, man, I wish, man. But then I think about my mom, and I just think I would never forgive myself if I got her sick and she died because of one little mistake of me giving in to my inner lust of having fun, of just selfishly wanting to have fun and not seeing the bigger picture and taking my eye off the ball. And that just really puts things in perspective. And I'm just kind of like, I have talk with you, and we just remind ourselves
hype each other up.
This is why we're doing this, you know, like this
Yeah.
is the seriousness of the situation that we live in today, especially in this world during COVID era. So that again is a sacrifice. People might not understand that, but that's okay, because everyone's entitled to living their life the way they want to live their life. And I support that, as well as supporting my own life as well. But
yeah, I think that's that kind of sums a lot of sacrifice up.
yeah, I'd love to know if you guys have any sacrifices that you're making, adopted or not. I'd love to hear your story, and you know, feel free to comment below or reach out to us again. We're always welcome to hearing your guys' thoughts on anything that we have to say. Until next time, take care, guys. Peace.